sitting.
Okay, so I'm starting the recording now, and I will actually go to speaker mode so that we can get a good recording going on here in a second. Okay, so I'd like to introduce Mr. Jan C. Scruggs, Esquire, and the name or the title will be Lessons in Leadership, Success in Life, and I'll read his bio. Um, okay, and it says, when people visit the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C., they can see the visual reminder of the men and women who died. Army veteran Jan Scruggs wants people to know the story behind the memorial. Jan Scruggs is the founder and president emeritus of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. In 1979, Scruggs conceived the idea of building the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. as a tribute to all who served during one of the longest wars in American history. Today, it is among the most visited memorials in the nation's capital. Scruggs was a wounded and decorated veteran of the Vietnam War, having served in the 199th Light Infantry Brigade of the U.S. Army. He felt a memorial would serve as a healing device for a different kind of wound, that inflicted on our national psyche by the long and controversial Asian War. Scruggs' mission to remember those who sacrificed in Vietnam continues on with a campaign to build the Education Center at the wall. The Education Center will show the photos and tell the stories of those who made the ultimate sacrifice during the Vietnam War, as well as celebrate the values embodied by American service members in all of our nation's wars. A national speaker and author, Scruggs has written articles on a wide range of topics, including the Civil War and the Battle of Gettysburg. He has appeared on 60 Minutes, Nightline, Good Morning America, and The Today Show, as well as on C-SPAN, CNN, and Fox. He has written opinion articles for The Washington Post, USA Today, The New York Times, The Washington Times, and other national and regional publications. So I wanted to introduce Mr. Jan Scruggs and his quote, and I'm going to try to share the screen. Always a moment of terror, as we all know. And can you guys see the screen? Yes, can you see the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So this is the quote that he would like us
Yes,
to
we can.
Thank you very much. It says, without memory, there is no culture. Without memory, there will be no civilization, no society, no future. And that's Elie Wiesel. And that was his quote. And Mr. Scruggs, would you like me to show the video now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, can you see the video?
Yes.
Okay.
It's very difficult for me. I've only done this once before, and I kind of fell apart. So all these guys who died on this day, I saw them die. I was with them. And all these guys, they're all laying on the ground. They weren't moving. They were all dead. Just 12 guys. They were all dead. There was nothing we could do. I suffered such post-traumatic stress disorder from that. I was kind of haunted by it. So all of our buddies who died, obviously, who the hell's going to remember them? For some reason, it became my quest to do this. It was like something I had to do because I was so tortured by what had happened in this incident. This created the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Many of the people who were related to these people on the wall, they know they didn't die for nothing. They remember him the way he was when he was 19 or 20 years old, before he got killed in Vietnam. They remember how he was, and they think, you know, what would he have done in life? He would have done something good and had a family, but at a young age, he was robbed of his youth. If you look at these memorials, and this one particularly because it's so big with all the names, these are very hard deaths. They were violent deaths that occurred 12,000 miles from Nebraska or your home. It's a tough thing. We ended up with this memorial because of them.
Vietnam veterans have come to Washington, D.C. to take part in this ceremony.
to dedicate the memorial to all who served. Let us take a moment to remember those who were taken from us. A moment of silence. Ladies and gentlemen, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial is now dedicated. How about a hand?
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing now. And so Jan, please, you're welcome to speak, and then you tell me when you would like me to show the photos.
Sure. Jan Scruggs, very honored and overwhelmed to be your Monday morning inspiration. And your work in hospice is really important because there are so many people who really need your help. People who are dying, the end of life, and the families. Everyone needs a shoulder to cry on from time to time, and a hug, and someone just to talk to, and to share their grief and anger with sometimes as well. So it takes a lot of courage and strength to do what you do, and I really appreciate it. In a profound sense, really the Vietnam Veterans Memorial and the names thereon were an operation to give delayed dignity to the Americans who unselfishly gave their lives for their country from the 1950s until April of 1975 in a country that most of us had never heard of called Vietnam. And during that war, the nation was at war with itself because of the opposition. And the Americans who ended up in Vietnam, whether they were drafted or volunteers, simply did their duty to the country. Congress and Presidents Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson, Nixon, and Gerald Ford could not stop that war, and we needed troops to continue to fight it, so that's what we did. And this was the great American tragedy of the 20th century. 3 million, almost 3 million of us ended up over there, and 58,000 were killed, 300,000 wounded. Fighting was usually pretty fierce. I mean, at close range. This wasn't drones. These are guys with hand grenades and rifles. I mean, fighting each other in the jungle. Usually, in the battles I was in, that's what it was like. They were close to us, and they had a lot of advantages. They would sort of pick the time to fight when it would be to their advantage, and they would spring an ambush on us, and we would do the same thing to them. But so May 27th of 1979, I was still, barely 19 years old, and I was on a patrol, and we had a 5-hour battle, and a friend of mine was killed. His name was Claude Van Andel. So we put him in a body bag, and I took him to the helicopter with 5 other guys. It was very difficult, carrying a dead body. I thought I could just kind of carry it myself, and it really takes 6 people to carry a dead body because the weight sinks in the middle. So we carried him in this body bag, and I'd never seen anybody die. It was just absolutely awful. I couldn't believe it. Then the next day, we were once again in a huge battle, and some North Vietnamese troops got behind us. And I was shooting at them, they were shooting at us, and they got the perfect shot and hit me in both legs, my hip, my shoulder. My rifle was still working, so I kept firing. I changed magazines, and then I said, I don't think I can fight anymore because I think I'm dying. I was bleeding out. And so I said the Lord's Prayer, and I was like looking down on my body, kind of a weird thing, I was kind of leaving, I think. And then somebody called my name, Scruggs. And I said, that's me, save me. So ended up back in my unit after I was rehabilitated, spent a couple of months in the hospital. In January of 1970, 12 of my friends were killed unloading a truck truck was on fire, and we weren't heroes, but the truck was on fire. The truck was filled with ammunition, and we all jumped the truck. You know, like the truck could have exploded. We'd have all been killed. And the 12 people we were trying to save, they were all dead. Not one of them was alive. It was unbelievable. I mean, it wasn't the hugest thing that happened. Anyway, but it gave me post-traumatic stress disorder. And I became an expert on it in graduate school. I did some research. I testified before the U.S. Senate. I wrote a couple of articles in the Washington Post, and I was, an expert on post-traumatic stress disorder. And they set up the Vet Center programs to help people who have problems from military events, PTSD. So 1979, I saw The Deer Hunter with my wife, and we said, the next morning I told her, I said, look, I've decided to build a National Vietnam Veterans Memorial and put it on the nation's capital, somewhere in the nation's capital. So that began this crazy journey. I had $2,800 in my pocket from a little inheritance I got from my father. So, hired a lawyer and started the effort, and didn't know what I was doing, but got a good team together. A bunch of graduates from the West Point Military Academy, the smartest ones there, were sent to the Harvard Business School. Because you have to understand, the U.S. Army, like the U.S. Marine Corps, the Air Force, it's a big corporation with all these levels of approval and, 500,000 employees. It's bigger than Amazon. So they need these managers, people who understand supply and so forth. So these Harvard guys put together a plan like a Harvard Business School. We need three things. We need a land, we need a design, we need money. And if we get the land, and if we get the design, we can get the money, and we'll have this built for November 1982. We're going to do it in 3 years, which is impossible. But we did it. We succeeded despite some awful experiences. The people who were opposed to this memorial were very kind of ultra patriots, kind of like they wanted a memorial that would say the Vietnam War was right. We were right to go there and fight these communists and so forth and so on. And that was not the whole idea. The whole idea was to separate the war from the warrior, honor the military veterans. That's all we're trying to do. We can't get into refighting the Vietnam War. Do that in your classroom, do that on the internet. We can't do that. They tried to fight us, and we beat them, and somehow we got the construction permit and actually got it built for November 11th. So in a nutshell, that was the story. And now I'm going to show you some pictures with my cheerful assistant here.
Yeah, just hang on a second.
Got the big smile. That's the cheerful smile. Yeah.
There you go.
By the way, I shaved my beard.
Oh.
Shaved my beard and mustache last night. Do I look better?
Is that, you seen the picture?
Yeah, okay, here you go. First picture is this. Just the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. I was there a couple weeks ago. There's always, hundreds of people there. Next. Again, just a random photograph. Next. People leave these items at the memorial. This is a miniature Purple Heart, some combat-related ribbons. You see the reflection of the medals in the stone. Next. Again, looks like kind of a tough guy. Mercer County, Kentucky, killed in action 25 February 1968. That was during the Tet Offensive. And it was pretty rough. Next. Yeah, again, people leave these things there. There's a picture of the guy's grave, American flag. The person put everything in plastic. It was raining the night before. Next. Again, the same thing. There's a lot of writing. This is an Air Force officer, and likely shot down. No, maybe Army. Next.
I think that was all we had.
Okay, good. Well, that's, these are the photographs that I selected, and I hope you enjoyed hearing the brief story. And at this time, I'm more than happy to answer any questions that one might have.
Mr. Scruggs, my name's Laurel. Thank you for being here this morning. This isn't a question. I'm just struck by how you took your experiences that were, painful and awful, and you did something transformative. You helped a nation be able to honor and grieve, all of these folks who died in combat. And I'm just appreciating the will, the effort, the intention to do that when you yourself were hurting. I just appreciate what that took for you. It sounds like you were driven to do that, and you did it. So
Yeah, I went through life for 3 years with blinders on. Nothing mattered except this 24/7. Not a part-time job. It's a this became a like an obsession almost. And somehow or other it worked, and it's good. And by the way, the idea for having the names on the memorial was driven by the work of Carl Jung, who was a student of Sigmund Freud, and he talked about collective psychological states and societal heroes, particularly people who are wounded or killed fighting for their country, or ingrained in people's memory. So that was part of the idea of putting the names there, and that was the most brilliant thing. And the design. How many people here can tell us the name of the person who designed the Vietnam Veterans Memorial? Maya Yang Lin. Maya Yang Lin, yeah. She was from Athens, Ohio. Both of her parents were professors of English, and a very brilliant family, one of the first families from China that actually had immigrated to England and here to the United States. Next.
Jan, this is Diane. Jan is one of my all-time heroes and just an incredible person. And I met Jan years ago, I guess when we did our first Welcome Home, and then was a part of the Hospice of Chesapeake team. But my question to you, Jan, is you had significant, unbelievable opposition to this wall. And when you posed the idea, people laughed, right? And the government's like, we're not funding this. And so your idea, and look, it's one of the most visited memorials, and the healing that happens because of you and your idea. So my question to you is, how did you make it happen? I don't know, is there top 3 lessons that you could share with us, top 3 things that really, when there is so much opposition, and how did it happen? Can you give us some advice?
You can accomplish anything almost if you have the right team in place. We had the right team in place. Prominent people, United States senators, groups like the Veterans of Foreign Wars and so forth. The opponents had very talented people. They had unlimited funding from a Texas billionaire. They were determined to stop this. The stakes were very high. A recent book called A Rift in the Earth by James Reston is worth reading. The stakes were high because whoever won would sort of control the narrative for the Vietnam War, the societal narrative. And so the conservative people in Congress and in the media started coming after us. And we were just really very middle of the road, but we had some very important people on our team who were spokesmen, including William Westmoreland, who was, not the greatest leader we've had in the country leading troops, but he stood behind me and he stood behind the memorial. I continued to talk to him whenever I could to keep him on the team. So it was rough, and life is rough. But you know what? As long as nobody's shooting at me, I think I could deal with it.
Well, Jan, thank you for never giving up. And we are so happy you had those blinders on and that you got that amazing team to help you create that wall. It is one of the most beautiful, moving, amazing, sacred places I've ever been. So thank you.
My pleasure. Well, I would have to say as my final remarks, my favorite quote on courage, and you all have to show courage every day when you do your jobs, serve people who can't serve themselves anymore. Written by a guy named Charles Moran Wilson, who was in the British Army in World War I and saw all kinds of terrible things and great physical courage from young people fighting and dying. He wrote, "The courage is a moral quality. It is not a chance gift of nature like an aptitude for games. It is a cold, hard choice between two alternatives. It is the fixed resolve not to quit, which must be made not once, but many times by the power of the will." So courage is willpower. That's what he was saying. And the important thing for everyone to remember is courage does not mean you are not afraid. It merely gives you the strength to look your enemy in the face and to fight back. So that's what my message is.
Thank you so much for your message and your words and everything that you did to bring this memorial to life. And speaking of courage, you mentioned something earlier about realizing you had PTSD, I think, and seeking support from that. Right now, today, that's something a little bit more in the public eye, a little bit more in the media. I don't know how it would have been in the 70s or 80s. How did you find that out about yourself? How did you get that insight and then the help?
Well, the American Psychiatric Association hadn't quite signed on to PTSD being a disease. So these Senate hearings and other things helped move that along. So we found people in Congress who did realize that this was a real problem for hundreds of thousands of military veterans. PTSD, you can get PTSD from a sexual trauma, from being beaten up, being shot in a bank robbery. I mean, it doesn't have to be in a war. PTSD can actually change your brain, the way it's wired a little bit. One event is so dramatic and traumatic. You keep reliving it, and it hurts you. So, well, ultimately, just by hanging in there and having the right allies in Congress, the disease was recognized, and people with it, can get help from the Vet Center program. And most major cities will have one. We even have one here in Annapolis.
Wow, thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Scruggs, for joining us, and we're very appreciative of your time, especially this early on a Monday morning. And
I'm going to start on Monday. That's a good idea. More people should do this.
Yeah, and what's wonderful is that we have it recorded, and so people can see this, and we can also use this as just a way to perpetuate your, what you've done, and to share that with other people. So thank you very much for sharing, and I hope everybody has a great day.
Thank you so much.
Such a pleasure.
So grateful.
Thank you.
You inspiring.
Hey, Jan, thank you.